Welcome to the Deep Dive and our ongoing Porter-Pedia series. We're plunging back into the amazing world of Cole Porter today. We're tackling something really fascinating. Cole Porter's lifelong quest, you might say, for the perfect love song. Now, you know Porter for his wit, his sophistication, often his scandalous lyrics. But what about love? How did he handle that in his music? We're going to explore his different styles of love songs and, really crucially, how his, well, incredibly complex personal life shaped them. And it's all drawn directly from our source material.
Yeah, it's a truly revealing deep dive this time. Porter's relationship with love was, well, much like his music, really, full of layers, contradictions. We'll definitely see a duality in his songwriting. Some pieces feel almost obligatory, like he had to write them for a show. But then others are just profoundly introspective, really probing deep. It's quite a journey, from the surface to the soul, maybe back again. And we'll trace that path through his work.
Okay, let's unpack this duality then. Because our source really highlights this, doesn't it? These two kinds of love songs, the perfunctory and the probing. The perfunctory ones. Yeah, they often felt, like our source says, almost required for the musicals. You needed a romantic ballad, tradition demanded it, right?
Right.
But then you had the probing songs, where he seemed to be genuinely exploring love, often in a much more authentic, complex way. And it's interesting to think about how his own certainty about love seemed to shift over time. Maybe devolved is the right word. As a young writer, he seemed pretty confident. But later on, that certainty definitely seems to waver. You almost feel it when you compare, say, an early song like What is Love with the later, what is this thing called love? Big difference.
Oh, absolutely. He understood the formula, the need for that ballad in the shows of his day, but how he did it, that varied wildly. Our source makes this brilliant distinction. Sometimes it was, poetry and song, other times more like prose and stanzas.
Prose and stanzas.
Yeah, take I'm in Love Again from the Greenwich Village Follies back in 1924. It became a standard, sure, but our source points out it's actually quite perfunctory, prosaic even. Love gets reduced to these almost childish sort of populist rhymes like comin', strummin', hummin', and the lover acts like a lovebird singing or a spring lamb springing. It's simple. It even uses this rhetorical device, antanaclasis, repeating a word but with two different meanings.
Ah, okay.
Porter uses it, but our source suggests it feels less like real cleverness here and more like a superficial trick, like what someone like Alexander Pope might call false wit, because it doesn't really serve a deeper emotional truth in the song.
That's a really great point. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Right.
What does make a love song truly connect with you? Is it just a clever wordplay, or is it something, I don't know, deeper, something that feels genuinely felt?
And that leads us right into Porter's more, let's say, perfunctory side, where love often just shows up as a cliche or maybe a fleeting idea. He seemed to genuinely struggle sometimes to find the right metaphors for love in these songs. And way too often, he just fell back on these all-purpose kind of vague terms like thing or something.
Right. You see that so clearly in I Am Loved from Out of This World in 1950. Our source calls it an extended cliche. The wife character just goes on about what a wonderful, glorious, beautiful thing love is. She repeats wonderful 3 times. It's almost bland, isn't it, in its adoration. Was he really buying into that uncomplicated view or just giving the audience what he thought they wanted?
It's hard to say for sure, but yeah, songs like that do hint at maybe a more detached perspective. Or think about just one of those things from Jubilee in 35. Here, love is the sudden rush, this emotion that, as the song says, cannot be permanent because it is too hot to cool down. He uses metaphors like a bell that stops ringing or a flight that has to land eventually.
Yeah.
It implies this intense feeling to just can't last. It's just one of those things. Happens, then it's over. Like a shrug, almost.
And that tendency towards cliches, it pops up again in I Love You from Mexican Hair Ride in 44, doesn't it? Where the lover can't find the words himself, so he gets nature involved, the breeze, the hills, the dawn, to declare his love for him. It sounds nice, I guess, on the surface, but it's still leaning pretty heavily on those common images, not something really original or personal.
Exactly. And then, there's Easy to Love from Born to Dance in 1936. This one, it starts off quite seductive, suggests the soaring heavenly trip. But then, as our source points out, it takes this almost ludicrous turn towards domesticity. It ends with marriage, children, and breakfast.
Breakfast. Seriously.
Yeah.
Our source calls it the most heterosexual love song Porter ever wrote, but also maybe the least credible. I mean, breakfast. Talk about killing the mood in a love song. It's almost like once that initial rush is over, all that's left is the mundane routine. So, okay, when we listen to these perfunctory songs, are we just hearing Porter doing his job, meeting the market demand? Or Is there maybe a subtle cynicism about love itself, kind of baked into their simplicity? It suggests maybe that even in these popular, charming songs, there might be a more detached view from Porter, or at least a very practical view of what a musical needed to sell tickets.
I think that's a fair way to put it. But then, wow, what a contrast when you turn to his more probing love songs. That's where he really dug into love's deeper effects, its overwhelming power, and often its fleeting, mysterious nature.
Yeah, this is where Porter's lyrical genius gets really complex and honestly much more interesting. Take What Is This Thing Called Love from Wake Up and Dream in 1929. It's such a key example. The question gets asked right there in the title, but our source points out it's never actually answered in the song. Love is this personified thing like a bird flying in and out of a window, just elusive.
Uh-huh. And At Long Last Love from 1938 does something similar, right? Posing all these questions, using these extreme opposites, is it sapphire or charm? Rainbow or mirage? Real turtle soup or mock? He's searching, trying to find a metaphor that fits, but he just doesn't land on an easy answer. Love remains undefinable.
And that mysterious thing pops up again, and you've got that thing from 50 Million Frenchmen.
Right, whatever that thing is, it's powerful. Powerful enough to mess with nature, make birds forget to sing, make farmers leave their farms. Our source explains that Porter, in his own words, actually defined that thing, for him anyway, as the procreative drive. Or his phrase was the urge to merge with the splurge of the spring.
Wow. So basically, sex.
In that context, yeah, for him, that thing often meant the sexual drive, but he also explored love as like a possession or maybe a kind of rapture.
Yeah, like in I've Got You Under My Skin from Born to Dance. Love literally bores under the skin. It becomes this inescapable part of you.
Exactly. Or think of Night and Day from Get Divorce. Love there becomes this hungry yearning, a constant jolt of fire inside. It's just this relentless, overwhelming force.
It feels almost obsessive in that song.
It does, and sometimes it goes even further into almost a mania, like So in Love from Kiss Me Kate. That song describes this extreme, almost Dionysiac obsession where the lover is willing to put up with pain, lies, even desertion. It's way beyond simple romance. It's this intense, all-consuming passion.
But alongside that intensity, he also seemed constantly worried about love lasting, didn't he? Questioning his permanence. So many songs seem to brood over that fear of loss. You hear it in Weren't We Fools, way back in 1927, or After You Who, and So Near and Yet So Far, both from Gay Divorce.
Yeah, even in a really deeply romantic song like In the Still of the Night from Rosalie, the lover is still wondering, is this real? Is it just an illusion that's going to fade away?
And often in his songs, it does fade.
It does. Love is frequently presented as a dream. And when you wake up, you have to say goodbye, like in Goodbye, Little Dream, Goodbye from Born to Dance. The challenge becomes trying to keep that dream alive, even if the person you love is just a fantasy figure. That's there in Dream Dancing from You'll Never Get Rich. The hyphenated title itself suggests they can only dance together in a dream. Porter also seemed to view love as this cycle, like a round robin or a carousel, union, separation, reunion, over and over. You see that in Ça, c'est l'amour from Les Girls, or C'est magnifique from Can Can, where the magnifique inevitably turns tragique and then back again. It just keeps spinning.
It's really fascinating how these probing songs, the ones full of questions and maybe melancholy, they're often his most powerful, the ones that really stick with you. Maybe because they tap into that universal human feeling that love is complex, it is uncertain, rather than just offering some neat, tidy package.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the human element. We have to connect Porter's own relationships to these songs. Our source is pretty clear that while he often mixed up love and sex in his songs, he mostly kept them separate in his private life.
And right at the center of that private life was Linda Lee Porter. Our source describes her as the still point in his turning world. She was the source of his unswerving love, his admiration. He called her the most perfect woman in the world. It really seems like it was only with Linda that he found that kind of capital L love, the kind that, as Shakespeare said, alters not when an alteration finds. Unconditional.
Yeah, but then what a contrast with a song like Love for Sale from the New Yorkers in 1930. Porter apparently said it was his favorite song. Our source calls it a prostitute's monologue, and it's really striking how autobiographical Porter found it, given his own experiences with male prostitutes. For him, in that context, love means sex, a commodity obtained for a price. He sought out men, often from different social classes, truck drivers, sailors. The source even notes specific racial preferences, and that black men were sometimes, well, less expensive.
Wow. So on one hand, this incredibly profound, steady love for Linda, and on the other, this transactional, almost commodified view of sex and maybe love reflected in Love for Sale. It just underscores that dual, sometimes really contradictory nature of his emotional world.
His relationships with men were definitely complex. Take Paul Sylvain. He was more than just a valet or a chauffeur. He was really trusted, part of the household. Porter had this abiding, almost fraternal affection for him, our source says. He showed immense care for Sylvain, getting him a proper hotel room during a tryout, making sure his widow got his wages, setting up a trust for his daughters after Sylvain died. It seems like a relationship built on deep loyalty and care, not necessarily romance.
Okay. And then there was Boris Kochno, described as Porter's dream lover.
Yeah, Porter's letters to Kochno were just full of these almost adolescent outpourings. You are the only thing in the world that is dear to me. I want you in my arms. Really intense stuff. But it seems Kochno didn't really feel the same way back. Our source suggests this dead-end relationship might have been a big influence on what is this thing called love? Maybe fueling that unanswered question, that sense of mystery and unattainability.
That makes sense. And later there was Nelson Barcliffe, the dancer.
Right. Their relationship, maybe a bit more formal, but still significant. Porter wrote, "I miss you like hell," in letters to him. And Linda apparently was quite fond of Barcliffe, too. Porter seemed to really value Linda's affection for his companions. But eventually, Porter came to feel that Barcliffe was, quote, incapable of love, affection, loyalty, sentiment, or friendship. He felt Barcliffe was more focused on his career.
Which makes that claim about, "you'd be so nice to come home to," from something to shout about in 1943, even more interesting. Barcliffe claimed he was the inspiration. And that seems plausible, right? They were in the early stages of their affair then. But the source also asks, well, could Linda have also been an inspiration? Porter was in New York near Barcliffe, but Linda was up in Williamstown. Who was he really thinking of coming home to? Ultimately, of course, the song became this massive WOBI hit. It kind of transcended any one person, didn't it? Became this universal feeling for soldiers missing home.
It really speaks to Porter's genius, doesn't it? That a song potentially born from such a complex, maybe even messy personal situation could resonate so broadly with so many people. These relationships with men, as our source describes them, often seem unfulfilling for Porter, maybe because of that lack of reciprocity, which just highlights again how unique and solid his bond with Linda really was.
Okay, so let's try and bring some of this together by looking at what our source calls Porter's love trilogy. We're talking Love for Sale, Night and Day, and So in Love. These aren't just show tunes, are they? Our source really insists they should be seen as carefully crafted poems, representing love as what, purely physical, then as overwhelming passion, and finally as this powerful, enduring force.
Exactly. They're incredibly crafted. Look at Love for Sale. The verse sets this somber mood, the moon looking down on an empty street, its smile turning into a smirk. That's the cue for the prostitute. The AABA rhyme scheme is very direct, almost like a job description. But the refrain, it doesn't follow a strict meter.
Yeah.
Love for Sale gets repeated, making the vocal line feel closer to speech than song. It's this masterful, almost mournful monologue.
And Night and Day from Gay Divorce. The verse just hammers you with love's effect through these relentless sounds, right? The tom-toms, beat, beat, beat. The clocks tick, tick, tock. The rains dip, drip, drip. These sounds just echo in the lover's head, making it impossible to think about anything but you, you, you. It perfectly marries the sound to the feeling, creating this visceral sense of longing, almost obsession.
It really does. And finally, So in Love from Kiss Me Kate. It's unique because it doesn't have a traditional verse. It's set up by dialogue instead. And Porter uses identical rhyme like dear, rhyming with dear, or you with you, which just intensifies the feeling. The melody line rises and falls in what our source calls rapturous bliss. And he uses anastrophe, that's inverting word order, like night mysterious instead of mysterious night.
Ah, okay, like poetry.
Exactly. It's a poetic choice. It shifts the rhythm, emphasizes certain words, elevates the whole mood. He even uses the word love itself in 2 different ways in that song, showing just how precise he could be with language.
You know, it's really no wonder he's included in the Library of America's American Poets Project. He wasn't just writing lyrics for songs, he was painting pictures with words, evoking these incredibly deep moods with his music, creating these intricate tapestries of sound and meaning that just last.
He truly did. Porter was absolutely at his best when he was describing the effects of love, rather than trying to pin down love itself. He could treat it playfully or seriously or cynically, but always with this incredible poetic precision. He managed to describe, as Pope said, what oft was thought but ne'er so well expressed.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Cole Porter's, well, search for the perfect love song, the question kind of hangs there, doesn't it? Did he ever actually find it? Or maybe Maybe his genius wasn't in finding one single definition, but in being able to articulate all the myriad, often contradictory, sides of love. Its profound impact on us. He showed us love as this grand, overwhelming force and as something fleeting, sometimes even transactional, both sides.
It makes you think, what does Porter's lifelong struggle to define love and his ultimate mastery in describing its effects? What does that tell us about our own timeless human quest to understand this incredibly elusive emotion? Maybe go back and listen to some of these songs again. Listen with a new ear, maybe. For the layers, the contrasts, and that relentless, deeply human search that feels like it's always there just under the surface,